watching Let's Chat.
Yes, indeed. You've heard that song for generations now. That and many other great ones brought to you by the one and only Mitch Ryder. Pleased to have Mitch Ryder and his lovely wife, Megan, in the studio. Mitch, nice to meet you.
Thank
Megan,
you.
how are you?
I'm well.
Before we get to you, who's the cutie over here?
Scrapper.
What's the doggy's name?
Scrapper.
Scrapper.
Yeah.
Scrapper's just kind of hanging out with us, and we're certainly glad to have all three of you here this morning. Let me say, first of all, what an honor to have both of you here. Mitch and his wife, Megan, are now living in and around the Chattanooga area, and you're actually a native, right?
Yes, sir. Graduated from Lakeview, Fort Oglethorpe High School in 1976. I just gave away my age.
How did you get hooked up with him? Long story.
Short story.
Short story, all right.
I ran out of here and headed for Detroit. My sister had met and married someone from Detroit, and I met him while I was in Detroit. I was there for 42 years and brought him back down here because I was sick of the weather. But as I like to tell him, I ran north, snagged the best Yankee guy I could find, and drug him back home.
Drug him back down south. We're certainly glad you did. We're going to be talking about why Mitch is here coming up in just a few minutes, but just a quick look back at your history. It's amazing. I mean, you were the last individual to perform with Otis Redding.
Yeah, that was sad, really.
What was he like?
Well, I recorded down at Stax with Booker T and the MGs, and I had the opportunity to meet him down there in the studios, and we performed together. And that song on that day, I had no idea it was going to be the last time he would sing. But the next day, he flew out in his plane and crashed in Lake Michigan in the winter and froze to death underwater.
Horrible loss for the music world. And
I think so.
For you as losing a friend.
But he was a Georgia boy, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he certainly was. You, back in 2005, were inducted into the R&B Hall of Fame.
That's weird.
The,
yeah.
the first living
White
guy to get inducted into the R&B Hall of Fame.
Well, Elvis is in there, but it's a posthumous deal, you know.
Right.
Right. But
where were you, and what went through your mind when you heard the news that you were getting inducted?
I didn't think I deserved it.
Really?
Well, you know, there's a big difference in the way you interpret music, and R&B has been sort of a closed camp. I guess the reverse would be Jackie Robinson breaking into baseball.
It's very similar in nature.
You know, yeah, but it was an honor, and still is.
You've had a lot of honors over your careers, and I know you're not one to toot your own horn, but I'm going to do that. You've been influencing folks like Bob Seger, John Mellencamp, Bruce Springsteen, and a list of others. What also went through your head when you heard Springsteen was doing Devil with a Blue Dress on stage, as an encore, no less?
Well, he did invite me to come and do that with him, and I did. That's one of my favorite photographs. He was at Cobo Hall in Detroit, and we rehearsed the day before, got up and sang it that day, and great response from a sold-out crowd, and he continued to do it for years after that, and still does from time to time.
Do you still get the thrill of performing when you go out on stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why not. Yeah.
A lot of people, once they have had several hits and they have done the tours and this, that, and the other, they're tired of it. You seem to get more energetic in your performances as the years go
on. As the years go on, you appreciate it more, I think. You appreciate your accomplishments, and you really value the time you have left, and so you want to make the best you can of it.
I want to ask you about a guy that I know you had kind of an inside running joke with, and you were friends as well. The hardest working man in show business.
James.
James Brown.
Yeah.
Tell me about your relationship with him.
I have a story I like to tell, but James and I met, and James was on the Tonight Show one time, and Johnny Carson, who was the host at that time, asked him who he thought the best soul singer, white singer was, and he mentioned my name. And so we became friends after that. And I went to see him at a gig in Detroit. James was the king of the kings.
Right.
And so I walked into the dressing room, and I stood at the door, and I said, James, it's Mitch. Come to see you. And he's got one of these big cones over his head. You know the old rocket ship cones that you used to dry your hair?
Right.
So he had that on his hair, getting his hair dried. And he goes, can't hear you, can't hear you. It was like, so I walked a few steps closer. I said, James, it's Mitch. I come to say hi. And he goes, can't hear you, come here. He does this a couple times till I'm standing in front of him.
Right.
And he's seated. And I said, finally, I'm getting really frustrated. James, it's Mitch. I just came to say hi. Wanted to wish you luck. All that. Can't hear you. Honest to God, can't hear you. I was standing in front of him. So I get down on my knees. And the biggest grin you ever saw on any person came across his face, because he had me where he wanted me, on my knees in front of him.
Wow. Incredible.
That's James. But on the day he died, Christmas Day, I guess nobody in the rock industry was answering their phones except me, which tells you about my Christmases. And they asked me what I thought he contributed to music. And I think mostly theater. I snuck into shows when I was 14 to watch him perform. He brought a sense of theater with the costumes, the choreography, the drama, the little cape routine, all these little things he did with that kick-ass band he had. And so that was my contribution to his obituary. And it was the first quote to get out, because nobody could be contacted until the following day. So,
wow. Incredible story. We're going to continue our conversation with Mitch Ryder and his lovely wife, Megan. We're going to do that right after this commercial break.